This is the College Football Countdown to Kickoff show on 97.3 ESPN with your host, Nick Costco. We're taking you up to the kickoff of Rutgers football. Now, live inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, here's Nick Costco.
It's the College Football Countdown to Kickoff show right here on 97.3 ESPN. I'm your host, Nick Costco. It is week number 4 of the college football season, and this is only the third show of the year. I almost confused myself right here just coming on air because we were off last week. Rutgers had a bye week last week. We're going to take you up to the kickoff of Rutgers football today at noon as they take on Boston College at home in Piscataway. I will likely be back up at SHI Stadium in a couple weeks on October 5th when they take on the Maryland Terrapins. But for now, we're back here inside the friendly confines of the Matt Black Kia Studios. Rutgers, Boston College coming up at 12 noon. We'll send you out with Chris Carlin, Ray Lucas, and Eric LeGrand for the call of that one. Rutgers 8-point dogs at home today against Boston College. They're 1-1. Boston College 2-1 on the season. They actually just got walloped by Kansas last week. Boy, I'll tell you what, and we'll start there before we dive into the other games as we're going to welcome in Pete Sampson of The Athletic in a little bit. He'll talk some Notre Dame-Georgia. That's the big game of tonight, number 7 Notre Dame at number 3 Georgia. But we'll start with Rutgers real quick as they take on Boston College. And I gotta tell you, this is it. This is it for Chris Ash. If he loses this game, Rutgers drops today, I'll tell you what, it's going to be a long 2019, and it's going to be all over, folks, and it'll be over quickly. I'll tell you that right now. If you're a Rutgers football fan, if you really hate Chris Ash, then you might as well just root for a loss today, because if he wins this game, it's going to give everybody a slimmer of hope that they can beat I would say, a more brand name-worthy non-conference opponent. And if they can do that, well, then you say, all right, they might have some luck later in the year. Obviously, they're not going to beat Michigan next week on the road, but they do come back home again against Maryland on the 5th. They do play Indiana on the road. Those are, I would say, winnable type games. Minnesota maybe up in the air, but the Liberty game, the Illinois game. Here comes the stretch now for Rutgers season where I initially said in the beginning of the year there are 6 winnable games on the schedule. Now, do I think they're going to win 6 games? No, I think they were going to go in. I came into the year thinking they were going to win 3. After much deliberation over the entire offseason, I figured, okay, they'll win 4, maybe they'll win 5, and then I ended up settling on 3 games for the entire 2019 season. But this is the stretch, folks. Boston College today. I know they have Michigan on the road next week, but then you have Maryland, Indiana. That's home and away, and then you're home against Minnesota, home against Liberty, at Illinois. Here it is. This is it. This is Chris Ash's tenure at Rutgers right now, because the 3 games to end the year, they're home against Ohio State, home against Michigan State, and they're at Penn State. They're not winning those 3 games, folks. I don't care how much. I don't care if they were improved or not this year. And I'll tell you what, they have Art Sikowski starting at quarterback today for the injured McLean Carter. He's still knocked out with a concussion, although he is steadily improving, as Ash alluded to earlier this week on the Monday press conference. But you're throwing Sikowski back in there, and he was obviously the worst quarterback last season, led the nation in turnovers. He didn't look that good 2 weeks ago against Iowa when he had to come in the second half for Carter, who went out with the injury. Again, it's kind of unfair to throw Sikowski to the Wolves against Iowa last week when you weren't really preparing for it. But now you've had 2 weeks to prepare for Boston College. Again, I know Kansas is probably going to be on the upswing at some point because of Les Miles as the head coach, but you have 2 weeks now to prepare for Boston College. It's not an easy game today, but with 2 weeks of preparation, 2 weeks, it's like it's like how we say in the NFL all the time. You have 2 weeks to prepare for this team. There's no excuse why it should not be a competitive game, or there's no excuse why you shouldn't win a football game with 2 weeks of preparation, and you are at home. This is an old-school Big East rivalry. Boston College has won 10 in a row against Rutgers. It's time to break that streak. If you are Chris Ash, if you are Rutgers, if you want any respect from the fans this week, if you want any hope to keep your job after 2019, you must win this football game today. And frankly, I still can't see it happening. Sikowski in there, I have absolutely no confidence in the kid right now. I don't care how much they say they've improved right now. He needs to show me, he needs to show the Rutgers fans that he is absolutely improved over a nation worst 19 turnovers last year in 11 starts. I get he was a true freshman. I get he was thrown to the Wolves 2 weeks ago against Iowa. But you've had 2 weeks of preparation, and for all the talk that he's vastly improved and he's smarter, and I know they want to be careful with him. They do actually do want. I mean, they want to redshirt him. They do. That's why McLean Carr is the starter. But now you have to start Sikowski because he's the next best option. You're going to throw in Johnny Langan in there? You're going to throw in the true freshman Cole Snyder in there? I don't think so. You're going to throw in Sikowski in there because he has the most experience from the remainder of the quarterbacks. He's got to play well today. And for him to play well today, he cannot turn the ball over. So if you're offensive coordinator John McNulty, what do? You must run the football. Run. Isaiah Pacheco's back there, a South Jersey guy from Vineland. He's every time he touches the football, he's great. I get Iowa is the outlier game this year because you have UMass, which they look great, and against Iowa they don't. They look awful. They got shut out. But I think they lie somewhere in the middle. But you feed the ball to Pacheco. You feed the ball to Raheem Blackshear. You get tight end Matt Alemo involved. He's a UCLA transfer. Get him involved. I get it. You don't have Jonathan Lewis, and you're missing other guys on the offense. But you have to utilize these guys in the intermediate passing game. Get Bo Melton the football in space. You see how well that worked against UMass? You have to do it. All right. That's enough. Josh is looking at me like I'm nuts, but
I'm just worried about your blood pressure over there. That's all.
Well, I needed to get that out of my system because, again, this is it. Ash's job is on the line today. If they lose, how in the world are they going to win 4 or 5 games this year? They really don't. They won't. Gotta stop A.J. Dillon. Gotta stop him. All right, I think I had some other thoughts on Rutgers, but I almost just blew a couple gaskets right there. So let's move on. We're going to Michigan and Wisconsin, a big game today. Number 11 Michigan at number 13 Wisconsin. So we saw Michigan; they survived that scare against Army the other week. And again, why do teams schedule Army? These big schools, Army is probably the most disciplined team in college football ever. These are service academies. I think discipline's in their nature, believe it or not. Again, mistake-free football, the triple option offense, regardless of what you think of it, still works a lot. Army's a great football team. I just want one day where Army or Navy or Air Force, they go undefeated, and then you have to say, maybe they should be in the college football playoff. Can you imagine that? So we go back 2 weeks ago. Michigan defeats Army in overtime, 24-21, a game that Army probably should have won in the Big House. And, again, we go back to the 2-week method. Michigan had a bye week last week to kind of get that out of their system, 2 weeks to prepare for Wisconsin on the road today. This game's going to determine which of the non-Ohio states in the Big Ten is a true playoff contender. Again, I think Michigan is the best shot to beat Ohio State this year. Wisconsin, maybe. But they are relying on that. They do have a good defense, don't get me wrong, but they are relying on the run game. Jonathan Taylor, another South Jersey product. If you're Wisconsin, you have the advantage because you have Taylor, who's probably the best player on the field at any given moment, and you have that defense. Again, Michigan, good defense as well, but is Shea Patterson really Harbaugh's guy? He is technically, but again, if Harbaugh has any stones, he's going to open up this offense for Shea Patterson. You got him for a reason last year as a transfer, and it ended in disaster against Ohio State last year. So if you're Michigan, if you lose this game, you're done. I don't care. I mean, even if Harbaugh beats Ohio State this year, again, maybe that will be, let's just say Michigan loses to Wisconsin, but they beat Ohio State. Maybe they still get to the Big Ten championship game and they have a rematch with Wisconsin in the title game, but this game might be a playoff eliminator already in Week 4. It's going to be very tough for Michigan. So, again, I think the true playoff contenders out of the Big Ten will come out of this game, whether it's Michigan or Wisconsin, and they'll compete with Ohio State for that Big Ten slot in the college football playoff. We also have Auburn at Texas A&M, number 8 Auburn at number 17 Texas A&M. Bo Nix, the true freshman quarterback for Auburn, has slowed down a bit since that opening win against Oregon, but they're on the road and they're a top 10 team. And I'll tell you what, Auburn and Alabama sounds a lot better than it did last year as we look towards the end of the year for the Iron Bowl. If they both stay in the top 10, I think this is also a playoff elimination game. I don't think Texas A&M has really any shot to get out of the SEC for a playoff spot if they lose today. But I can easily see them upsetting Auburn. I get it's an upset, but they're at home. Again, Auburn, I like them, but I think the true challenger to Alabama in the SEC will come out of this game. I also can't rule out Florida, and we'll talk about them a little bit later. And, of course, number 7, Notre Dame at number 3, Georgia, is later tonight. That's our game of the week, and we'll talk to Pete Sampson in just a few minutes from The Athletic, and we'll talk to him about Notre Dame and get his thoughts on the game tonight. All right. After the fast 10 minutes, we're going to step aside and take a quick break. On the other side, of course, Pete Sampson of The Athletic. We'll talk Notre Dame-Georgia, look ahead to some college playoff notes as well, and we'll give you our picks. Now 4-4 in the season. We were 3-1 first week, second week 1-3. Hopefully we're back above 500 after this week. Keep it locked here. It's the College Football Countdown to Kickoff show right here on 97.3 ESPN.
This is the College Football Countdown to Kickoff show with Nick Costco on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Welcome back to the College Football Countdown to Kickoff show right here on 97.3 ESPN. I'm your host, Nick Costco. Pleased to be with you again on this Week 4 Saturday of college football. And we're ready to bring in now our guest, Pete Sampson of The Athletic, covers Notre Dame football for them. And we have a big game tonight. Pete, how's it going, man?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I appreciate you coming on. So we'll get right into it. Obviously, this is I would say the biggest game of the season so far, at least in terms of the rankings-wise. Number 7, Notre Dame. Number 3, Georgia. I wanted to ask you first, obviously, you're very ingrained with Notre Dame football. This is a playoff team last year, but I get there's Ian Book is back, but is this team actually for real? And looking at their schedule, they've only beaten up on Louisville in New Mexico, and this is their first true test of the season on the road in Athens. Is Notre Dame actually a legit playoff threat again?
You'll have an answer for that tonight. My feeling on being around Notre Dame and covering Notre Dame is they're not. I think that they're going to be a 10-win team. I think they'll be a New Year's Six team, but I think they're just lacking that little extra to get over the hump. And I think last year's Notre Dame team that made the playoff would struggle to make it this year with this schedule at Georgia, at Michigan, at Stanford. USC comes to Notre Dame. So the schedule is really, really difficult. This is the biggest spread, I think, of a good Notre Dame team on the road since Brian Kelly's been here. This is just a really difficult place to come and win. So I think the biggest problem for Notre Dame is Georgia. That's sort of you look at Notre Dame as a playoff team or not. They got to get through Georgia to answer that question.
Now, you mentioned that Notre Dame is not quite as good as last year, but I'm looking at their team, and I'll play devil's advocate here. Obviously, Ian Book is one of the better quarterbacks in the country. What makes this team not quite playoff worthy in your mind, but it still makes them a 10-win team?
Yeah, the positives, the quarterback Ian Book you just mentioned. I think where they have questions they still have to answer, and I'm not sure they're going to be able to answer them, is what are they up the middle on defense? They lose a first-round pick, Jerry Tillery. They lose 2 starting inside linebackers who had, I think, 215 tackles last year combined. It's very hard for me to think of great teams that aren't great against the run. And Notre Dame right now is not a great run defense because they have to rebuild so much on the interior of the defense.
And the fact that you say that you're scared of basically this Notre Dame defense against the run, it probably makes me, at least you as a writer for Notre Dame, it probably makes you deathly afraid of Georgia's running attack. Obviously, Jake Fromm, one of the more solid quarterbacks in the country, but DeAndre Swift and company are one of the best rushing attacks in college football for Georgia.
Yeah, and I think that's why people are so confident that Georgia's going to win tonight, maybe by 2 touchdowns. It's a matchup problem. It's not that Notre Dame doesn't have raw material. Their secondary is outstanding. Ian Book is very good. Their offensive line, I think, needs to be a lot better, but there's great material there. The receivers are good, NFL tight end. But the matchup against Georgia, you can't beat Georgia if you're not incredibly stout up the middle against the run, and Notre Dame just hasn't been that way for the first 2 games of the season, and it was a concern going back to when last season ended. How is Notre Dame going to come back and rebuild its run defense with new starters and sort of a lack of, I think, really high-level NFL type prospects at those positions?
circling back to the playoff discussion for Notre Dame, obviously, again, we mentioned before that they made it last year, but then the very disappointing performance against Clemson in the semifinals. And whether they get back there or not, this is their biggest game of the year. And you mentioned before they are on the road at Michigan later in October. But for a guy like Brian Kelly, the head coach, it seems like it's almost like he's a lifer at in this position for Notre Dame. Is there expectation for him to get back to the playoff this year, or if they, like you say, if they win 10 games in our New Year's Six team, what's Brian Kelly's job status moving forward? I can't see him getting fired, obviously, but is there an overwhelming expectation for Brian Kelly to make the playoff now, year in and year out?
No, not an overwhelming expectation. I think Notre Dame, not that Notre Dame's going to come out and say, like, our goal is to make the playoff every 3 years or every 4 years, but I think realistically that's sort of what Notre Dame's shooting for, because, Notre Dame will tell you, like, we're not recruiting at the level of Georgia, Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, and they will sort of come to their own defense and say, look, we have to cast a wider net, and we can get fewer kids to actually come to Notre Dame, which is, academically a little bit more rigorous than some other places. That's tough for Notre Dame. And look, there's only four playoff spots, and Alabama and Clemson are getting half of them every year. So there's just not a lot of opportunity, I think, for Notre Dame to make it annually. Now, should they be in the playoff discussion every year? Yeah, but I think that people around Notre Dame, if they go 10-2 this year and they go to the Cotton Bowl, which is a New Year's Six game, and they win that to finish 11-2, that without qualification will be a very, very, very good season for Notre Dame. I don't think they're in a position of Alabama or Clemson or even Georgia, frankly, where they can look at a season, if they don't make the playoff, be like, well, that was a wasted year. I don't think Notre Dame's in that position quite yet.
Well, I'm a Rutgers alum, so I'm just hoping for some bowl berths, for some bowl berths in the next couple of years after a disappointing last 3 or 4 years. Sticking with the game tonight for now. Obviously, if Notre Dame goes on the road in Athens and beats Georgia, I could see them jumping from number 7, probably right to number 4. This would be the biggest win for, I would say, any team this year so far. I think at that point, if Notre Dame should win this football game tonight, would the microscope just get even bigger on Notre Dame throughout the rest of the year? And then I would say at that point, their last legitimate game is probably the game against Michigan in October, right?
Yeah, they haven't won at Stanford since 2007. I know Stanford's down this year, but to get back to the playoff conversation, if Notre Dame wins tonight, then then it's sort of like the goal is the playoff. This is in a lot of ways, I think for Notre Dame, this is like a playoff quarterfinal game. If you win it, then you can sort of keep your playoff hopes going. If you lose it, I think all barring some really bizarre circumstances, you're out. This would be the biggest win for Notre Dame. Spent a lot of time thinking about this week. It's, I think the people point to Oklahoma in 2012. I think you go back to Florida State in '93 or Miami in '88. That's how big winning at Georgia would be for Notre Dame. So it's a huge opportunity. And if they get it, then you can have a real serious playoff discussion about Notre Dame.
It is amazing that the fact that since the college football playoff was implemented, I would say once you get to week 2 or week 3, the entire conversation every week is dominated by, all right, who's in, who's out, who is going to make or break their chances this week. Now, as a guy who covers a historically good football school, but they are an independent, are you for or against expansion? And if you are, do you see it implemented in a way where the 5 power conferences get a spot and then you have 3 wild cards? What would you say about the future of the college football playoff from an independent team's perspective?
I think that the expansion would be good. It would make I think 4 is good too. I don't have to sit here and have a strong opinion that I don't think anything's broken about the college football playoff that needs to be fixed. I think an 18 playoff would be great. I think a 14 playoff is great. I think from Notre Dame's perspective, an 18 playoff would certainly help their access. It would make Notre Dame more. It would embolden them to be independent even more than they already are, because the only reason Notre Dame has to join a conference is if they're excluded from the playoff because it's champions only. That's not happening right now. It's not going to happen because the SEC would never allow it. So if it goes to 8, Notre Dame has more of a shot to get in. I think that'd be great, especially if you can get maybe the quarterfinal games on campus in December, something like that. But I think Notre Dame they don't mind the 14 playoff. 8 would be great. I think that's probably where we'll get to. But I think Notre Dame's perspective is they're fine with how things are right now. They would be fine with it expanding to 8 as well.
So you see obviously Notre Dame's been independent for such a long time, but you see no scenario where Notre Dame would actually even remotely consider joining a conference should they get excluded from the playoff, let's say, for the next 3 or 4 years? No,
because I think that for them to be excluded from the play, you're talking about Notre Dame getting excluded from the playoff if they were 12-0. If they were getting left out in that scenario, then yeah. But that's not ever going to happen. They're in 2015. Notre Dame had a very, very good team. They were 10-1 going to Stanford, and there was a lot of gnashing of teeth of okay, are they going to get left out at 11-1? And I think they probably would have. They would have got left out for Oklahoma. Notre Dame would have finished 5th, and Oklahoma finished 4th. So, in that scenario, I think Notre Dame, they would be bummed about it, but it's not the move. Wouldn't be join a conference. It would just be well, you got to figure out how to win all your games instead of just winning 11. So the whole Notre Dame mortgaging or changing 125 years of tradition over the decision of a playoff committee 1 year is kind of ridiculous when you think about it in those terms. You're not going to flush something that you've spent more than a century building over the decision of a committee that puts 4 teams in and leaves a bunch of teams out. So I think Notre Dame's they're comfortable with where they are right now. If they got left out and they were 12-0, that would be a different conversation. But I don't see that ever happening.
Pete Sampson joining us here on the College Football Countdown to Kickoff show. He covers Notre Dame for The Athletic. Pete, we'll circle back to the game tonight after some enlightening playoff conversations. So you're down there in Athens. What's the atmosphere like? And I would say this is probably one of Georgia's biggest games in recent memory as well. I mean, obviously they played in the national championship just a couple years ago. They've been in SEC title games, but for a regular season game, this has to be the most exciting Athens has been in quite some time for Georgia Bulldog football.
Yeah, it'll be a record crowd tonight. They brought in an extra 500 seats, so they'll get over 93,000 tonight. So I think that will be the 10th venue where Notre Dame is the record crowd against an opponent. So they play big games down here. It's Notre Dame coming to town is awesome. It's not like playing in the national championship, but it's a big, big deal. And it's there. I think the electricity tonight in the stadium is going to be incredible. I've just so fascinated to see what it's like at kickoff in Sanford Stadium tonight because Georgia plays in a lot of big games. This is bigger than playing Alabama, probably not, but it's rare. I think the first ever visit down here for Notre Dame adds a lot of juice to the whole thing.
Certainly a lot of juice there. Just a couple more matchups on the field. Obviously, we talked about Ian Book before, and he kind of makes the Notre Dame offense go. And on the other side for Georgia is Jake Fromm. Very safe quarterback, but I guess people will give him that moniker of game manager. I personally like him. I think he's going to end up being the best pro prospect coming up in the next NFL draft class. But when you're looking at the quarterback matchups, again, Georgia's probably going to keep it on the ground here, but if you're going to pick one of these quarterbacks to lead an offense tonight, would you prefer Ian Book or a guy like Jake Fromm?
I'd prefer the guy that's been a 3-year starter who's played in the national championship game, right? I think Ian Book, for Notre Dame to win tonight, Ian Book has to do something we've never seen him do. He has to have an A++ game. If that happens, then Notre Dame has a chance. Jake Fromm, just like you said, game manager. He just needs to do what he always does. Jake Fromm doesn't need to do anything other than his normal stuff tonight for Georgia to win. Ian Book sort of has to almost have an out-of-body experience. So it's a tough situation, I think, for Ian Book just because so much is on his shoulders. Jake Fromm doesn't really have to shoulder so much of that with Georgia based on their run game and their defense and all the material that they have. So, yeah, I'll go with Fromm just because he's done it way more than Ian Book has. But I'm so curious to see, can Ian Book rise to the occasion in a different way than he's ever had to do before? If he does, and the coaches, I can tell you, Notre Dame's coaches are confident that can and will happen. If that does happen, then I think Notre Dame sort of has a puncher's chance tonight.
I like that term, out-of-body experience for Ian Book. You heard it here first. All right, Pete, one more before we let you go. Your game prediction tonight, who wins and why? Notre Dame-Georgia.
I have Georgia 34-14. I think it's very hard in the sport of football to sort of fake your way to a result when you're not the better team on either line. I think Notre Dame's defensive front is not going to hold up against Georgia's run game, nor do I think that Notre Dame's offensive line should say. I don't have a lot of confidence in them being able to protect Ian Book enough or give Notre Dame some semblance of a run game. So I think Georgia is just better on both lines. It's here. They're really talented. They've got a ton of material at running back. So that's why I'm going with Notre Dame coming up short tonight by quite a bit. So Georgia 34, Notre Dame 14.
Awesome job, Pete. Really appreciate it. People want to follow you on Twitter. What's your Twitter handle?
At Pete Sampson _ and you can check out all my stuff on The Athletic.
Yeah, do that. Athletic, great website, great resource for college football, among other sports. Pete Sampson doing a great job covering Notre Dame football from The Athletic. Pete, appreciate the time as always. Hope to talk to you again later in the season, and we'll definitely have you back on if Notre Dame sneaks back into the college football playoff.
Absolutely. Thanks.
All right, that was Pete Sampson of The Athletic. Again, you can follow him on Twitter at Pete Sampson _ catch all his stuff on theathletic.com. It is subscription-based, but he does a great job covering Notre Dame football. A lot of insight for you for the Fighting Irish. All right, we'll step aside and take a quick break. On the other side, it's picks time, boys. Maybe I'll have Josh conjure up some kind of pick music. I think we need to add a little juice to the show, into that pick segment when we come back. 4-4 on the season. Let's see if we can go 4-0 this week. Again, I'm winning you money. I'm winning you money either way. You either listen to me and win, or you do the opposite of what I say and you win money. So I'm always in the clear. Keep it locked here. You listen to the College Football Countdown to Kickoff show right here on 97.3 ESPN.
This is the College Football Countdown to Kickoff show with Nick Costco on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Sometimes it gets tough.
Welcome back inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, the College Football Countdown to Kickoff show. Nick Costco here with you, taking up to the kickoff of Rutgers football. They're taking on Boston College at noon, and my poor alma mater could be headed even further down the rabbit hole with a loss today. Boy, I'll tell you what, we pick them. We pick the game every week in our pick segment. That's what we're going to do right now. And also a good job by Pete Sampson of The Athletic for joining us. And the show will be put up on my YouTube channel on demand. And you can go back and listen to it and also hear Pete's comments on the Notre Dame-Georgia game tonight. So good job by him. Hopefully to have him on later in the season if Notre Dame is in the playoff conversation late in, let's say, November. All right, we're going to do our picks now. And so here we go. Pick number 1. We were 4-4 on the season, actually. 3-1 back in week 1. 1-3 week 2. We were off last week. So here we go. Week 4, game number 1. Got Tennessee at number 9, Florida. Florida, a 14-point favorite. Wow. Guess what, folks? We're going to go with Florida minus 14 at home. You heard it here first. I'm picking Florida at home. I think Tennessee is an absolute mess. You know what happens? This is what happens when you don't hire Greg Schiano and you screw up that whole coaching search and you go down to like your 5th or 6th option. So Tennessee dropping the ball on SEC football. They long for the days of Peyton Manning in Tennessee. So Tennessee on the road. I don't think they have any shot against Florida today. Florida is still a top 10 team. I think they have an outside shot to challenge Alabama in the SEC. It's gonna be a fascinating race between Alabama, Georgia, and Florida. Even Auburn and Texas A&M are going to be in the conversation so far for the SEC this year. We're going to go with number 9, Florida, minus 14 at home over Tennessee. Game number 2, we have West Virginia at Kansas. West Virginia, since they lost their head coach, they have been a mess this year as well. I mean, a lot of teams are a mess this year. Rutgers, Tennessee, West Virginia. I mean, Rutgers is in a category of their own. I mean, I hate to be UMass, too, by the way. Rutgers beat them a couple weeks ago in the first game of the year. Killed them, actually. So we'll see what happens. But West Virginia is a underdog at Kansas. Actually, no. Sorry, I take that back. West Virginia, a road favorite at Kansas. Kansas just beat up on Boston College last week. And Les Miles has that program going in the right direction. I like what he's doing. For some reason, I don't know why Kansas is a home dog to West Virginia for how bad they played this year as well. So I'm going to take Kansas plus 4.5 at home today over West Virginia. So far, we have Tennessee at number 9 Florida. We have Florida minus 14 over Tennessee, and Kansas plus 4.5 at home over West Virginia. Game number 3, number 11 Michigan at number 13 Wisconsin. We talked about this one earlier today in the show. Michigan survived an Army scare 2 weeks ago. Wisconsin rolling with their good defense and their running game with Jonathan Taylor. If Jim Harbaugh has any hope of making the college football playoff and not being a total joke at Michigan, he must win this game and continue a quest for an undefeated regular season in Ann Arbor. They're on the road today, and for some reason, I think the 2 weeks of preparation and the wake-up call from Army is going to bode well for Michigan today. I like Michigan on the road, plus 3.5 against Wisconsin. Put your money on Michigan, plus 3.5, or do the opposite of what I'm saying. You're going to win money either way, folks, so I'm telling you, you can't blame me for your losses this week. And finally, oh boy, here we go. It's the Rutgers game. It's the Rutgers line. Rutgers at home today at noon. We'll send it out to Chris Carlin, Ray Lucas, and Eric LeGrand in just a few minutes. Oh boy, Rutgers killed UMass week 1 and then were killed by Iowa 2 weeks ago. I think this team's still somewhere, they lie somewhere in the middle, but again, 3 wins is probably my hope this year for this team. I would like to see 4 or 5 and have them be competitive against the big boys, but I'll tell you what, they can't win today. Chris Ash, I'll tell you what, his time is limited, and it's going to be the seat's really hot right now. It's going to be boiling if he loses today, and it's going to be pretty much gone if they lose to Liberty later in the season. But Boston College is an 8-point favorite on the road. Rutgers is throwing Art Sikowski back out there at quarterback. I don't know, man. No McLean Carter. They're back at home, though. It's an easier opponent than Iowa, but I can't really see Rutgers covering today. It's going to be, I mean, maybe they'll cover. I don't see them winning today, unfortunately. It's just going to be a long day. Hopefully it's not a long afternoon for Rutgers. I mean, as an alum, a fan, and a former broadcaster of the team, just please win. Just my mental well-being. Please win. But Boston College -8. A.J. Dillon is their star running back. I don't think Rutgers is going to be able to stop him, really even contain him today. So Boston College -8 on the road. We're going to go with Boston College -8 at Rutgers today at noon. So just a recap before we wrap up things here. Tennessee at Florida. We have Florida -14. West Virginia at Kansas. We're going to have Kansas plus 4.5. Michigan at Wisconsin, Michigan plus 3.5, and Boston College at Rutgers. We're going to have Boston College -8. So we have two road teams and 2 home teams today. So we're going right down the middle, 4-4 on the season. Hopefully we're going to be 8-4 come next week. And we do actually have an announced time for next week's show and game. Rutgers will take on Michigan next week on the road. That game kicks off at noon. So we will be on the air at 11 a.m. next Saturday, September 28th. And then, of course, Rutgers will be playing Maryland on October 5th. And hopefully we'll be back up at SHI Stadium in Piscataway doing our show live from there. That time still to be determined. Big thanks today from Pete Sampson from The Athletic, covers Notre Dame football for them. Again, catch that interview and the entire show on demand in just a little bit. You can catch that later today. I'll have that up on my YouTube page. I'll tweet it out. Follow me on Twitter at NickKosko59, NickKosko59. Big thanks to producer Josh Hennig for pushing all the buttons and getting me on the air. Big thanks to Billy Schwein from before in the locker room for having me cross over with them. Rutgers football is coming up next. Rutgers, Boston College, live from Piscataway. We're sending it out to Chris Carlin, Ray Lucas, and Eric LeGrand. We will see you next week at 11 a.m. right here, 97.3 ESPN.